Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. And welcome to our penultimate podcast on our homelessness project. I have two special speakers today, Daniel Trace and Colene Evans Allen. Unfortunately, at the moment, Daniel isn't available as yet. Hopefully, he will join us soon. In the meantime, I would give you some information about our organization. First of all, my name is Dipchand Ramcharitar, and I'm the Outreach and Development Coordinator at Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization founded in 2020 and based in London, Ontario, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help, support, and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 25 years and so far in 95 countries around the world, joined together and doing various activities regularly. International Men's Day follows 6 pillars, which is for the overall well-being of boys and men. We follow in the same footsteps. Before we introduce our guest, I would just want to run through our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. So we have Colene with us, and we'll start off first of all. Welcome to the show, Colene. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's lovely to be able to join you.
Thanks again. And why don't we just dive right in? So first of all, what was your motivation for becoming an advocate for the homeless?
So straight to
Straight in.
straight into the
We
big
mean
heavy hitting
business here.
stuff. It's okay. It's a very straightforward yet complicated motivation, which is that I actually have lived experience with being houseless, street involved, and precariously housed myself. Total of 3 years, through 3 different shelters in Waterloo region over my time. And I wanted to find an opportunity to leverage that lived experience so that I could use my learnings, the things I figured out, to help support other people who are experiencing the same thing. And on top of that, I spent 2 years working as an emergency shelter, well, 2.5 years working as an emergency shelter support worker in actually a men's shelter. And while I was working there, I recognized the significant gaps in services, and that kind of led me to the point where I'm now doing what I do. And I am doing it because A, I have the lived experience, and B, I recognize that it is a gap that we need to lean into and provide support for. So that's what brought me there.
Wow, that's fantastic. There is no experience like lived experience, and you've been on both sides of the coin. So, I mean, you're just about the best person one can look forward to promoting and having some sort of effective solution towards the homelessness
Yeah.
crisis. So, we commend you for that. You're doing a fantastic job there.
Yeah.
So when it comes to there are lots of misconceptions about the homeless. And so what among those would you say are the most prevalent?
Well, where do we start? I can give you a whole list of things I've heard. I've seen, I've experienced over the years. I'll start actually with one I guess it was this past week, where Premier Doug Ford told people in encampments that if they're healthy, they need to get off their butts and go find a job.
Oh, Mo.
Wow. Where do we start with that one? Okay.
Yeah,
Let's talk about a couple misconceptions there. The first and foremost, the misconception that there are actually healthy people who are houseless. That is a complete myth. There's
right.
absolutely no one who is experiencing houselessness that is healthy. Okay. Let's be
Okay.
clear about that. The social determinants of health and the dimensions of well being say that stable housing is one of the requirements for good health. Well, if you don't have stable housing, you are not in good health, period. The amount of mental distress and stress involved just with the experience of being houseless itself, never mind all the other pieces that come with that, puts a person in a position where they're in a crisis mode, and that means that they are not healthy. So we're done with that. There are no healthy people in encampments. There are no healthy people in shelters. There are no healthy people experiencing houselessness. It doesn't exist. Um, then we have the, oh, well, they can, they can't access internet where they are, so they can go to a public library or they can go get a job. Well, okay, great, except that no fixed address is not acceptable to an employer. You can't access public internet or a computer at a library without a library card. And guess what you need in order to get a library card? An address.
Good address.
And this is the very first barrier and the very first myth a lot of people have is you don't need an address to access supports and services. Not true in a lot of cases, because some of the things that those of us who have stable housing take for granted and never realize is how important that address is. When you actually have no fixed address, all
Right.
of a sudden those supports and services are not open or available to you because you're barriered. That's just the first one. I have lots more.
Yeah. Well, can you give us a couple more important ones?
Sure. This is my personal favorite, and I've heard this one a lot of times. So the homeless are a waste of resources and a tax drain because they will never ever become contributing members of society. I love it
Wow.
when people come out with this one. And the reason I love it when they come out with it is because I look at them and go, hi, thanks for allowing me to prove you wrong. Because I do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I am employed full time. I am a contributing member of society. I was for 3 years a individual that was houseless. I am not a drain on tax dollars. I'm out there contributing. So, thank you for giving me the chance to prove you wrong just because you said that to me. I appreciate that one. And just a couple of other quick ones. That anyone who has a job can find or keep housing. Absolutely not true. That it won't happen to me. That mentality of it'll never happen to me. I'll never be houseless. I'll never be unstably housed. Not true. Absolutely not true. And that people want to be houseless. Well, if you've ever stepped foot in an encampment or a shelter in your life, you would know that nobody wants to be there. Absolutely no one. And finally, that only those with substance use health challenges are homeless. Absolutely not true. Senior citizens are homeless. Veterans are homeless. Okay. International students are homeless. It is not just people with substance use health challenges. They are one of the demographics affected by this crisis, but not the only ones.
Yeah, well, there are so many factors that contribute towards the homeless, and what you're saying there obviously makes a lot of sense, and people should pay attention. Basically, dig a little deeper to see the true root causes of homelessness. There's inflation, there's a lack of housing, both rental and ownership from standpoint. There are so many other factors involved that people, they don't associate with homelessness, but they all contribute towards that direction. So, it's something that sadly people aren't really paying attention to, and it's people like yourself and us that should take it upon ourselves to spread awareness, and so that more people can be educated on the issue, and make better decisions going forward.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I'll give you a great example. About 6 weeks ago, we had a high intensity F1 tornado come through a portion of our region.
right.
Okay. That left some people unable to stay in their homes because their homes were badly damaged by the tornado. Guess what? That's a natural disaster that
Yeah.
results in houselessness. Now, some people have insurance and resources to handle that. Some people do not. We're all one car accident, one illness, one workplace injury, one relationship breakdown, one flood, one fire, one natural disaster. It doesn't matter. We're all one of those things away from being houseless ourselves. And that's why I
Absolutely.
said, the it won't happen to me mentality, absolutely not true.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we have a situation when it comes to the homeless. How do you build trust with them, and both as an advocate and, let's say, just anybody on the street for that matter?
Okay, so this is an area I specialize in because, as part of my role as a community liaison and outreach facilitator, I actually do outreach peer mental health support into 2 shelters here in Waterloo region,
Right.
accounting for approximately 200 people in total because each shelter has 100 in it.
Wow.
Okay. And that is a huge challenge. And the things I have learned and figured out and also leveraged from my own lived experience are that you have to be patient with people. You have to give people space and time to decide for themselves when they're going to, open up and talk with you. You have to be consistent. You have to show up consistently. You have to keep your word when you give it. You have to be consistent. That then means you're trustworthy, and earning trust is a big key, right? You have to be compassionate. You have to be non judgmental. You don't know what brought that person to where they are, and it may
Exactly.
not be within your lived experience. And you need to keep your judgments in check, and you need to, be compassionate. Um, you also need to truly and empathetically listen
Yeah, that's
because,
a big, big part of it.
yeah, because most individuals who experience houselessness are too ashamed to say anything to anybody about it because there's a huge stigma around it in almost every culture. It doesn't matter which one you come from, there is a shame around it. Um, and they are, and I know this from my own experience, people walk by me and never even saw me. They didn't even care that I was there. They had
Right.
no interest in paying the least bit of attention to me. So
Yeah.
what happens when somebody actually sits down, offers sit down, excuse me, sit down next to somebody who is currently houseless, offer them a Tim Hortons coffee, have one there yourself. Maybe if you smoke, have a few cigarettes with you.
Right.
Start talking. They'll talk about whatever they feel like talking about. Don't try to guide the conversation to how'd you end up here. Leave that
Right.
alone. That's someone's story. They will tell you when they feel like they want to
Yeah.
and when they feel
Uh,
comfortable.
yeah. In your experience on the same topic,
Yeah.
do you find the homeless, like if somebody approaches them and offers assistance, do you find them sort of skeptical or apprehensive to accept that person's help, or do they readily do so?
It depends, right? So it depends on, are you just approaching on your own? What are you offering? And or are you part of an organization, right?
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, if I were to approach some of the folks from the shelter or, out at one of the encampments and be like, yeah, and I'm being legitimate. I'm connected with the 519 Community Collective, for example. They all know who those folks are,
Right.
right? So they'll be more inclined because they're aware of what the 519 is. And then same thing with, I'm with Sanguine, right? And in my case, I'm with my employer. So it all depends. And sometimes that offer of help needs to come after some rapport has been established because
Right.
they're not necessarily always going to be trusting, right?
Exactly. And the thing about that, is, when help is offered, they would look at you. But I would say they're sort of street smart, so they could have some sort of intuition
Yeah.
as to, yeah, this person seems genuine and this one, doesn't. So I think that helps the situation as well.
Yeah.
I think we've covered this topic. I'm gonna read out a question.
Yeah.
What are the most serious problems facing the homeless well, in this particular case, is there anything unique in your community that you notice that are facing the homeless as opposed to a general scenario?
Okay, so we have one unique feature to Waterloo Region where I live, that is not necessarily as severe in other areas. Part of our challenge is that we have a post-secondary institution here in our region right now that has the highest number of international students of any post-secondary institution in Canada.
Wow.
I believe it's a 77% enrollment rate. It may be declining now due to the changes in the number of student visas being issued.
Okay.
That puts an increased pressure on our lack of housing stock, creates shortage, and drives up prices for rentals and for purchasing homes to a level that is quite significant. And that unfortunately is not something we're going to be able to easily solve. And I want to be clear here. When I say that, I'm just talking about the basic statistical fact here. I am not, you know, by any means picking on or believing that they are the problem when I talk about the international students. Their presence is very welcome here. At the same time, we weren't prepared for it, and this is unfortunately where we've ended up. And in fact, we have international students who wind up in the shelters.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and that's one of the unique features of this area is that we have so many international students that we also need to provide housing for. And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Apart from that, we have a lack of supports and resources. It depends on the shelter or the encampment that you're in because some are more resourced and more able to provide supports than others, because we just have like a bare minimum set of supports. And
Right.
going above and beyond that for some is a challenge due to funding. We also have huge long wait lists for most supports and services from mental health through to actual supportive housing that range anywhere from 2 to 12 years. 12
Oh,
years on a wait list for supportive housing here.
yeah. That's
12.
that's even hard to even imagine, far less experience it yourself.
Yeah.
It's
And
yeah.
I mean, just affordable housing itself through the regions like rent geared to income and below market rent stuff, we're talking anywhere from 8 to 10 years.
Wow. So while we're on this topic, for what we've discussed so far, what do you see as some of the potential solutions?
Well, and this is where I get in a little bit of trouble here, but that's okay. We need to stop doing less stopgap measures and more longer term solution thinking. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Shelters and encampments are not solutions. They are piecemeal stopgap measures. We need to stop putting our focus on them and start putting our focus on the longer term stuff. We need to make sure we have less barriers to access services beyond the basics. Like I talked about, not having an address is a barrier,
Right.
right? Such a simple little thing for most of us. But for someone who is unhoused, not having that address eliminates a whole bunch of supports and services they could normally access. We also don't have, and we have a plan to address the housing crisis here in my region. It was developed with an ad hoc 1 year long committee of people with lived experience and living expertise in houselessness. We need a standing advisory committee. We need one that's there for longer than just one project. And we need that because there is nothing that anybody can do for us without us involved, right?
Yeah.
Like logically.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Um,
need to take that step ourselves.
Yeah, we also need to understand that some of the other barriers involved include things like rent bank rules to access the rent bank. I'll give you an example. You can't access the rent bank for last month's rent if you are not renting a unit that is regulated by the landlord and tenant, like the Residential Tenancies Act. But
Right.
most affordable housing right now for people on OW and ODSP is unregulated rooms. So, how do you get
Okay.
last month's rent for a room if it's unregulated and you can't afford to pay for something that is regulated? There's a barrier, right?
Right.
Communication barriers. This seems so simple, but when you don't have a fixed address and you don't have a phone number and you don't have access to the internet and an email address, it is exceptionally difficult to communicate back and forth with potential landlords, service providers, and on it goes, right?
Wow.
Message,
Yeah.
like basic communication. We also need to prioritize and streamline our processes for nonprofit and affordable and supportive housing projects. That's directed at the municipalities. Okay.
Okay.
We need to make that process easier. We need to make it simpler, and we need to put the priority on putting through developments and projects that are nonprofit, affordable, and supportive. Those should be the priority over for profit developers putting up condo buildings. Right.
Okay.
Logically, again, it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And then we also need to be realistic about what we consider affordable. So we have a requirement that a certain number of units have to be what's considered affordable when somebody puts up a condominium complex or a condominium tower. That number is about 5%. I want to understand how purchasing one of those units at $300,000 is considered affordable when that doesn't even meet the lifetime income of an individual on ODSP.
True. So on this front, while we're on this particular issue, how do you engage with government bodies regarding the homeless?
So, first of all, we network with all levels of government, right? I'm
Right.
talking with city councilors. I'm talking with regional councilors. I'm talking with members of provincial parliament. I'm talking with members of parliament. Now,
Okay.
in each case, I'm talking to them for different reasons. Okay. Um, I went to the Homes for All symposium back in June here in Waterloo Region, sat down to eat my lunch out on the patio, had a lovely woman named Dorothy sit down next to me, got to talking with her about why I was there, explained some of the barriers that I've seen people experience and that I experienced myself at one point in time, got to the end of my bit, went to ask her who she was and what she did, and discovered she was the mayor of Waterloo.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize who you were. I'm from Cambridge, so I know who my mayor is, but I didn't pay attention to who the mayor of Waterloo was." And so it's interesting. Sometimes these opportunities just happen. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to network and talk and advocate with a ward councillor from the city of Kitchener, right? So it's just taking advantage of those opportunities. In terms of members of parliament and provincial parliament, most of the advocacy work I do with them is on behalf of my outreach participants. So, for example, somebody's had their benefits on ODSP cut off. Well,
Hmm.
now I'm supporting that individual to advocate for their a resolution to that, or because their employment insurance claim was denied, with their member of provincial parliament or with their member of federal parliament, right? In order to get this looked into, because most of them aren't even aware of the fact that they can A, put this stuff in front of their member of provincial parliament or their elected officials and get it looked at. And B, even if they do, again, that communication barrier comes into place. So they use me as a go between to do that communication piece. So,
Oh,
yeah, I believe me, it's fun explaining to a member of parliament's constituency office, no, I'm sorry, you can't call him direct because he has no phone. He's in a shelter or he's in an encampment. Right? I'm
wow.
it. You have a consent to talk to me. It's me you're talking to.
Yeah. Well, we've pretty much reached the end of our program. I have a final question coming up, probably a couple for
Yeah.
you. But before we do, I have a bit of more information regarding our organization. There are no limitations to gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walks of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be part of our organization and help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We would love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Our phone number is 226 289 8784. Our email address info@voiceofmen360.org. Our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. You can also find us on all social media. Please join our Facebook page for daily activities and invite your friends as well. Other social media platforms we're on are Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. We also have a special announcement regarding the Residential School System 101 Part 3. The theme for 2024 is Call to Action. There will be documentary screening, speakers and presenters, storytime craft activities with two lovable characters, Jay and Gizmo. Dances as well. This will all be on October 6, 2024, 5 p.m. at Huron Park Recreation Center, 830 Paisley Boulevard, West Mississauga, Ontario. In case you need it, the postal code is L5 C as in Charlie 3 Peter 5. This is part of the Truth and Reconciliation Project, and we are happy to be involved in this, we being Voice of Men 360. So please do your best and turn out for that very special event. So we're almost at the end of our program here. Colene, just one final question. What are some ways policies should change to better serve the homeless?
Okay, so first of all, let's change the policies so we don't wind up with individuals who experience houselessness. Let's try a little bit of prevention here. If we don't have to get people in the situation where they have to experience houselessness, that's even better than talking about anything else.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
let's talk about it. How about we start providing realistic shelter allowances for Ontario Works and the Ontario Disability Support Program that match the actual market rents being asked for out there. Shelter allowance for a single individual right now on Ontario Works is $399 a month. That includes insurance, utilities, and rent. I challenge, and I'm going to go on record and say this, I challenge Premier Ford to find somewhere to rent for $399 all in a month, anywhere in this province. I don't believe it exists.
That's impossible.
Exactly. Okay. But we're expecting people to do this and then wonder why they're houseless. Okay. Yeah. We also need to tighten up on rent evictions and rel evictions. Okay, that needs to stop. There's a lot of that that's going on that's bad faith. It's blocking up the landlord and tenant tribunal. It's putting people into precariously housed positions. It's creating significant stress. Stop letting this be an easy process. Make it really, really hard. Okay, because what they're doing is they're evicting their tenants who are paying low rents, claiming that they're moving their relatives in or they're renovating, wait 6 months either way, and then re-rent the unit at nearly double or triple what they were originally having a tenant in their pay. That is prevention of houselessness, right? And we also need to bring immigration in sync, okay? We have international students right now that are in shelters because they're in immigration limbo because they don't have work permits.
Yes.
Postgraduate work permit. This is not a huge challenge. This makes sense, right? As I said before, prioritize and streamline and simplify processes for nonprofit, supportive, and affordable housing projects, and provide regulated protection for those who are renting rooms and lodgings that fall outside of the Residential Tenancies Act.
All excellent ideas. And, it's something we should all work towards, not only as advocates, but as the members of the
Mm.
community. So everybody should do their part.
Can I tell you a really cool story from my outreach work in one of the shelters to finish us off today?
Go for it.
Okay, you're gonna love it. This is a story of hope. So, in my infinite genius, I'm looking for ways to connect with people in the shelter,
Right.
and it's really hard to do. And so I thought, I wonder what happens if I bring a Buddhist monk with me.
Good idea.
So, well, no, this is. So I brought a Buddhist monk with me because we happen to have a Theravada tradition Buddhist monastery here in Waterloo region.
Right.
So I brought the monk with me to the shelter. He was an absolute hit. They were taking selfies with him. A couple people walked up to me and said, "Is he like a real Buddhist monk?" I was like, "Yep, no, he's the real thing." Right. Out of that, in talking with the members of the monastery, there was a decision made that they were going to provide a meal once a month to all 100 residents of the shelter.
Wow, isn't that
Okay.
something?
Now, hang on, it gets better. So they've done that now twice. They then decided they wanted to keep doing this regularly once every month because they want to be able to provide some support to this particular shelter. So they ran a fundraising drive where they managed to get their hands on scrap wood for free, and they've been building kneeling stools for meditation and selling those, and they have now raised enough out of doing so that they have funded the next 3 months of meals.
Well, isn't that's really special? That's
Okay. And we never asked them to do this. All we did was take the monk there and have him there to support the individuals that were there and have him be able to see what this place was like. And this is what we got as a result. The level of compassion is beyond belief. And I am so appreciative to this monastery and the members of it for the effort that they're putting in, because it takes those, and it, like I said, it's one meal once a month for each participant in that shelter. That's 100 meals. And yes, one meal once a month doesn't sound like a big deal. But again, it's 100 meals and it's consistent and it's regular. And they take it there and drop it off themselves and interact with the residents, like the participants in the shelter.
Right.
Right.
Well, that is so heartwarming. It is so inspirational. And kudos to that monk and all the four others who have followed in his her footsteps. And
Yeah.
that's a very, very recommendable, I would say, as well as commendable thing that that was done.
It's an education and awareness piece. The more people we educate, the more people we make aware,
Right.
the more support and resources we can bring to bear to help with the problem.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. So as we close, can you give us some contact information for those interested in getting to know more about your organization and yourself?
Certainly. So I actually work with the Canadian Mental Health Association, Waterloo Wellington, in the Self-Help and Peer Support Department. So you can reach us via website at cmhaw.ca. We provide mental health supports and services for adults, children, and seniors. And we provide a wide variety of supports, from support dealing with alternate realities, to support dealing with significant mental health challenges, to recovery drop-in peer support groups, to support for seniors in geriatric mental health, to support for children in children's health. We do it all. And the best way to contact our organization for support is to contact our crisis line, which is here 24/7. And you can reach them at 1-844-437-3247. And by the way, if you call them and you want to speak with me directly, you can actually ask them to transfer you to my extension.
Good. So thank you so much, Colene. Ladies and gentlemen, for all those of you out there, you have been listening to our penultimate podcast on our homelessness drive. And we have had a very enlightening and meaningful contribution from Colene Evans Allen. We want to express our deepest appreciation, and hopefully you out there have gained some valuable knowledge here. So again, Colene, thank you so very much. And for all of us here at Voice of Men 360, we thank everyone who took part in today's session, whether you were just listening or whatever way you contributed. Thank you very much, and have yourself a good day, good evening, good night. Goodbye from us here.